Welcome to Biophilia Classes Q&A session. Here we are discussing some model questions expected for CSIR exam and their answers. Here's the question. The DNA binding domains of eukaryotic transcription factor contains variety of structural motifs. Select the correct statement from the following. So the proteins that interact with DNA contain several different motifs, structural elements or domains. So the question is in this question they are specifically asking which domain of that particular protein or proteins, those proteins interact with DNA, how they actually interact with DNA. It's using their X or Y or Z domain. That's the major part they are asking in this question, and they also added select the correct statement from the following. So the majority of the statements provided here are wrong. So we have to choose the right one. See, the first option is DNA binding proteins bind to DNA using their alpha helix through non-covalent interactions. And the second option, DNA binding proteins bind to DNA using their alpha helix through covalent interactions. So in the first stage of answering this question, we can exclude those options having covalent interactions. The protein and DNA interaction is not that much strong, so we have to exclude these those options having the point covalent interactions. Here, the interaction is not covalent, so we are just removing those options with options having covalent interaction. So DNA binding proteins bind to DNA helix using the alpha helix. We don't know whether they are interacting using this alpha helix, but the interaction is not covalent. Here also the interaction is not covalent. So we are removing two options and we have to select the right statement from between these 2 points. The first point is DNA binding proteins bind to DNA using their alpha helix, or DNA binding protein, the last option, DNA binding proteins always bind to DNA using their beta domain via non-covalent interaction. So the interaction is non-covalent, but there is a confusion whether it is alpha helix or this what beta domain. Actually, in a normal condition, we have this DNA molecule. This DNA molecule, the proteins usually interact with DNA molecule for various purposes. So suppose we have this particular protein called as X. This particular protein has this domain, sorry, we have this DNA. We have this DNA molecule, and protein is interacting with DNA. A protein is interacting with DNA. So this is our protein, and this protein is X, and this protein specific domain interacts with DNA. So we have this specific domain. I can call this domain as, this domain is alpha helix. This alpha helix domain is interacting with the DNA. The alpha helix domain is interacting with the DNA. So it's not the beta or some other domains or some other motifs interacting. It is the alpha helix interacting with the DNA. So it generally a protein, the DNA binding proteins, alpha helix interact to the major groove of DNA. That point also should be remembered. Major groove of DNA. So alpha helix of this DNA binding protein binds to the major group of DNA. General condition, they binds to the major groove of DNA. So the interaction is between alpha helix of protein and major groove of DNA. We know several proteins are there, like DNA binding proteins, like they have different DNA binding proteins. They make use of different motifs, like leucine zipper, the homeodomain, then a zinc finger. All those proteins, a helix loop helix, and in bacteria we have this helix turn helix, and all these interacts using their alpha helix to the DNA's major group. So by considering this point, we have got the right answer. The right answer is, right answer here is the, yes, we have this right answer. The DNA binding protein bind to DNA using their alpha helix through non-covalent interaction. So the binding and the interaction is through alpha helix. Alpha helix interacts with the major groove of DNA, and the interaction is specifically non-covalent type. So that's all about the explanation to this question. Hope you have understand the question and answer. Thank you for listening.